Before the show starts, drop a comment below with where you're watching from, then sit back, relax, and get ready for some chilling stories. The night shift at McDonald's was supposed to be easy. Just a few drunk college kids, truckers grabbing coffee, and the occasional insomniac looking for a late-night snack. I'd been working there for 6 months, and by now, I knew all the usuals. But then he showed up. It was around 2:30 a.m. when the man walked in. His clothes were wrinkled and stained, his hair greasy and unkempt. He didn't look homeless, but he had that disoriented, unhinged vibe, like someone who hadn't slept in days. He stepped up to the register, eyes locked onto mine. Medium fries. No salt. His voice was flat, almost robotic. I rang up his order and told him the total. He didn't move, just stared at me with a faint smirk before finally fishing out a crumpled bill from his pocket. When I handed him his change, his fingers lingered against mine for a second too long. Thanks, Ryan. I froze. I wasn't wearing a name tag. We were out of them, and my manager never enforced it anyway. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he heard one of my coworkers say my name. But something about the way he said it, like he knew me, made my skin crawl. He took his fries and sat at the booth closest to the counter. Didn't eat, just stared. 20 minutes later, he came back. Same order, same blank expression. Medium fries, no salt. I tried to act normal, but my hands were sweating as I punched in the order. This time, when I handed him the bag, he chuckled. You should really lock your windows at night. My stomach twisted. Before I could say anything, he turned and walked out the door. I rushed to the lobby window and watched him disappear into the parking lot. He didn't get into a car, just walked into the darkness. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe he was just a creep trying to mess with me. But when I got home that morning, I checked my bedroom window. It was open. I barely slept, but when I showed up for my shift the next night, I forced myself to shake it off. I wasn't going to let some weirdo get in my head. At 2:30 a.m. sharp, he was back. Medium fries. No salt. I didn't say a word as I took his money, but my pulse was racing. This time, as I handed him his change, he leaned in slightly. You always take the same route home, he murmured. It's not very safe, you know, especially around that old gas station on Oak Street. My blood ran cold. That was my route home. I forced a laugh. Do I know you or something? The man grinned. Not yet. I turned to grab the fries, my hands shaking. When I turned back around, he was gone. The door hadn't opened, no footsteps, nothing. Just gone. I spun around to check the lobby, but he wasn't at his usual booth. I ran to the drive-through window, scanning the lot. Empty. My manager, Josh, noticed my reaction. Dude, you good? I hesitated, then shook my head. There's this guy. Keeps coming in, saying weird stuff to me. Josh frowned. What guy? I gestured toward the counter. The guy that just ordered fries, medium, no salt. He was just here. Josh's expression darkened. Ryan, no one's been at your register for the last 20 minutes. My stomach dropped. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. A text. Unknown number. See you soon. I nearly dropped my phone. My first instinct was to block the number, but my hands were trembling too much to even tap the screen. Josh must have noticed how pale I was. Dude, what's going on? I shoved my phone back into my pocket and forced a laugh. Nothing, man. Just tired. I didn't believe myself, and neither did he, but he let it go. I spent the rest of my shift on edge, jumping at every sound, checking over my shoulder every few minutes. But the man never came back. By the time my shift ended at 5 a.m., the paranoia had settled deep in my bones. I wasn't about to take my usual route home. Instead, I took a longer way, cutting through busier streets, hoping to shake the eerie feeling crawling up my spine. I kept glancing around, looking for any sign of him. Every shadow looked like a figure. Every parked car felt like it had eyes inside. I picked up my pace. My apartment was only a couple of blocks away now. Almost there. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not behind me, beside me. Matching my pace. I snapped my head to the side, expecting to see him. Nothing. Just the dim glow of a street lamp flickering against the sidewalk. I wasn't taking any chances. I sprinted the last 2 blocks, heart hammering, practically throwing myself at my apartment door. I fumbled with the keys, hands shaking so bad I dropped them twice before finally getting inside and locking the door behind me. I pressed my back against it, chest heaving. "Get a grip, Ryan." It was probably nothing. Probably just my imagination. I went straight to my room, closing and locking the window before collapsing onto my bed. My phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look, but I had to. Another text from the unknown number. "I like the new route, but you should really check under your bed before you sleep." I sat up so fast I nearly fell off the mattress. My breath caught in my throat. Slowly, I turned on my bedside lamp. The dim glow barely reached the floor, casting thick, heavy shadows. My fingers dug into the sheets as I leaned over, my head dipping just low enough to see. Nothing. Just an empty space. I exhaled sharply, forcing a laugh. He's just messing with me. He's not here. Then my phone buzzed one last time. A picture message. My room. Taken from inside. I bolted for the front door, threw it open, and ran into the street barefoot, lungs burning. The cool dawn air hit my face as I looked around wildly, expecting to see him standing there watching. But the street was empty. He was gone. Or maybe he was never really there. I had a bad feeling the second I pulled into the drive-thru. It was late past midnight, and I was starving after a long shift. The McDonald's parking lot was nearly empty, except for a few cars in the back and a single vehicle behind me in the drive-thru. An old, rusted sedan. No headlights. Weird, but I didn't think much of it at first. I rolled down my window, placed my order, a Big Mac, fries, and a Coke, then glanced in my side mirror. The car was still there, barely visible in the dim glow of the streetlights. The driver wasn't moving, not placing an order, not even rolling down their window. I shifted in my seat, suddenly uneasy. When I pulled up to the payment window, I couldn't help but ask, "Hey, is the guy behind me ordering anything?" The teenage cashier glanced past me, frowning. There's no one behind you." My stomach twisted. I turned my head sharply, looking through my rear windshield. The car was gone. I felt my face heat up. Maybe I was just exhausted seeing things. I laughed it off, paid for my food, and drove to the next window to grab my order. As the McDonald's employee handed me the bag, I hesitated before pulling away, glancing in my mirrors one last time. Nothing. The lot was empty. I shook off the nerves and turned onto the road. My apartment was only about 15 minutes away, down a stretch of mostly deserted streets. I took a sip of my Coke, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching into the bag for a fry. Then I saw them. Headlights. In my rearview mirror. A car had pulled onto the road behind me, keeping a steady distance. My chest tightened as I recognized the shape of it, the same rusted sedan from the drive-thru. I tried to stay calm. Maybe it's just a coincidence. I turned onto a side street. So did they. I switched lanes. So did they. Slowing down at a red light, I finally got a good look at the driver's seat through my mirror. It was empty. My hands went numb. I blinked hard, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. The driver's seat was completely vacant, but the car was still moving, keeping pace with me. The light turned green. I slammed the gas pedal, my heart hammering. I took random turns, hoping to lose them, but no matter what, the car stayed behind me, moving with an unnatural smoothness, like it was gliding. I was nearly home when I made a split-second decision. I wasn't going back to my apartment. No way in hell was I leading this thing to where I lived. Instead, I veered into the parking lot of a police station, tires screeching as I pulled into a spot. My hands were shaking as I looked up at my rearview mirror, expecting to see the car pulling in behind me. But it wasn't there. The street was empty. No tire marks. No fading taillights. Just gone. I sat there for a long moment, trying to slow my breathing. I even got out of the car, walked to the sidewalk, and looked in both directions. Nothing. I felt like an idiot. I was overtired, paranoid, probably hallucinating after a long shift. That's what I told myself, anyway. Eventually, I convinced myself to drive home. Big mistake. I pulled into my driveway, headlights cutting through the darkness. My apartment complex was quiet, most of the units dark except for a few glowing windows. The eerie silence only made my nerves worse. I grabbed my McDonald's bag and stepped out of the car, still glancing over my shoulder. Nothing. No strange cars. No shadowy figures lurking in the distance. Just me, the street, and the distant hum of a street lamp buzzing overhead. I let out a shaky breath and headed for my front door. That's when I saw it. A McDonald's bag, sitting neatly on my porch. At first, I thought maybe I had dropped mine, but when I looked down, I was still holding my order. Slowly, I bent down, heart pounding, and picked up the second bag. It felt warm, fresh. I pried it open with trembling fingers. Inside was the exact same order I had just picked up, a Big Mac, fries, and a Coke. But the drink was missing. My stomach twisted as I noticed something tucked into the bag. A receipt. But this one wasn't printed. It was handwritten. "You forgot your drink." The air around me felt suddenly suffocating. My throat dried up as my eyes darted around the complex, searching for movement. Someone had been here. Someone had followed me. I fumbled with my keys, every nerve in my body screaming at me to get inside. The lock finally clicked, and I rushed in, slamming the door shut and throwing the deadbolt into place. I stood there in the dark, heart pounding against my ribs, gripping the McDonald's bag like it was some kind of cursed object. And then a knock. Soft, deliberate, right on the other side of the door. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My phone was in my pocket, but I couldn't bring myself to reach for it. Every instinct I had told me that whoever, or whatever, was out there was still watching, waiting. After what felt like an eternity, the knocking stopped. I never found out who left the bag. I never saw that car again. But every time I pass by that McDonald's, I feel it. A presence, a gaze, something unseen, lurking just beyond my vision. And I never, ever order the Coke. The first time I heard the whispers, I thought it was just my imagination. It was my third week working the late shift at McDonald's, and I was finally starting to get used to the eerie quiet that settled over the restaurant after midnight. The drive-thru slowed down, the dining area emptied, and all that was left was the hum of the kitchen equipment and the occasional beep of the fryers. That night, it was just me and my manager, Kyle, closing up. He was in the office counting the register, while I finished wiping down the tables in the lobby. The place was silent until it wasn't. At first, it was so faint I barely registered it. A soft murmur, like someone talking just out of earshot. I turned my head toward the noise. The back of the restaurant. I glanced at the kitchen doors. Kyle hadn't come out. "Hello," I called out, my voice bouncing off the empty walls. No answer. I shook it off and went back to cleaning, but the feeling of being watched clung to me like a second skin. A few minutes later, Kyle finally emerged from the office, stretching his arms. "All right, let's get out of here." I didn't mention what I heard. I wasn't about to be the new guy freaking out over nothing. But the next night, it happened again. I was refilling the napkin dispensers when the whispers started. This time, they were clearer, urgent, frantic murmurs, overlapping each other like a crowd of voices speaking at once. I froze. My pulse quickened. The sound was coming from the kitchen. I peeked through the doors, expecting to see Kyle messing with me. But the kitchen was empty. Then, out of nowhere, slam. The freezer door swung open violently, hitting the wall with a force that made me jump back. Cold air poured out in a thick mist, sending a chill down my spine. I swallowed hard and stepped closer. "Kyle." No answer. I hesitated before peering inside. The shelves were stacked with frozen patties, bags of fries, and boxes of nuggets. Nothing unusual. But then in the far corner, something caught my eye. A McDonald's uniform. It hung neatly on a hook, the fabric stiff and darkened with age. A name tag was attached to the shirt, but the name had been scratched out, deep gouges running through the plastic. And then I noticed the stains. Something dark and crusted covered the fabric. Not grease. Not ketchup. Something worse. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me, filling my ears. I stumbled back, my breath coming in short gasps. And that's when I saw it. The security monitor, mounted on the wall near the office. The screen flickered with static before showing a live feed of the lobby. I could see myself standing there, frozen in fear. But I wasn't alone. There was someone standing behind me. The screen glitched. The figure moved closer. I spun around, and the lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the restaurant. The hum of the kitchen equipment died. The only sound was my own ragged breathing. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The screen lit up, casting a faint glow around me. The freezer door was still open, the uniform swaying slightly, as if someone had just brushed past it. I took a slow step back, forcing myself to breathe. My mind screamed at me to run, to get the hell out of there, but my body wouldn't move. Then, from the blackness, the whispers started again. Right next to me. I spun around, blindly shining my phone's flashlight. The beam flickered across empty tables, the register, the drive-through window. Nothing. But I felt it, something there, lurking just beyond the edges of the light. I forced myself to take another step, then another, heading toward the front of the restaurant. My only thought was getting out. I reached for the door handle, and the security monitor crackled back to life. I turned my head, pulse hammering in my ears. The screen flickered with static before showing the live feed again. I saw myself standing at the door, frozen in terror. And behind me, a shadow, tall, unmoving, too close, too real. My throat locked up. I didn't want to turn around. I couldn't. Then the screen glitched. The image twisted, warped, and for the briefest second, I saw its face. Twisted, hollow, a mouth stretched wide, whispering words I couldn't understand. The lights flickered back on. I spun, heart in my throat. The restaurant was empty. No shadow, no figure, nothing. The only proof that something had been there was the freezer door, still open, the uniform still hanging, the whispers still echoing in my ears. I don't work the late shift anymore, and I don't close alone.